Happy Saturday, everyone. How are you? I hope that everyone is up in their glory on this beautiful Saturday morning. I pray that everyone is getting ready for their Easter for tomorrow. I know I am. I don't know if I'm gonna do any Easter eggs or whatever this Easter. I'm just gonna take it very light because I don't even expect any children, and then I didn't have a chance to really speak to the Sunday school superintendent about bringing any treats in for the children this year. This year, I'm just gonna chill. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about the story today. Ruth, one of Jesus's relatives, great grandmothers or whatever, in her story, because we are in the season of Easter, we are talking about things about Jesus's life and relatives and his reasons for coming into the world and his reasons for dying for our sins. Of course, yesterday was Good Friday, where it was demonstrated Jesus going to the cross. And before he went to the cross, we also had Palm Sunday, when they was all praising him as their king. Hosanna, Hosanna, who comes to save. That's what Hosanna stands for those of you who do understand some of the Christian teachings about Christ, and for every season that he was here among us on earth. Let's go into our Father's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Lord, give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. We forgive those who have trespassed against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thou you are the kingdom, the power, and all the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Yeah, so I just found this story kind of interesting about Ruth because she was a Moabite woman who had a different religious background, and she marries a Jewish Israel. These people were like living in Moab because, like, at the time, they were it was famine in the land, and they had to go wherever there was a place where they could actually work and also gain a living, food, shelter, and all the necessities of things they would need for living, because it was very little resources from where they came from, out of the land of in Jerusalem. I think they were living in Jerusalem, in Israel, but in Jerusalem. And there was some famine, so they had to leave and go and make a living in another place where at that time people had a totally different religious belief. From the movie I saw, they believed in some kind of god called what was his name again? It was some kind of statue where they did sacrifice young children that would have no kind of blemishes or anything. They didn't use animals to sacrifice. They would use young children, small children. They would put into the altar and sacrifice them as a sacrifice to their god, whatever the name of that god was. So for the Jewish religion, culture, and religion, it was like kind of like, oh, it was not something to them that was of godliness, to take a child and put him on the altar and sacrifice the child. So Ruth came from that culture, and in the Jewish faith at the time, it was like they could not marry out of their foreign women. It was forbidden for them to marry foreign women, because then that would change them from the faith. And then people still believe that to this day, that when you do marry somebody, and it does kind of like, for the man, it could turn his faith away from God, or either way, it could go either or, the man or the woman. Most likely the man, because he is to lead, always looked at upon as more of the leader and the provider and the protector over his people. So it's very important, like when he chooses a wife and they're going to have a family and all that, how they are going to bring their children up in the faith and the belief system or whatever they have as religious beliefs or whatever. So so she's a young woman he meets there. She's part of this. She's a priest. She's one of the pr- priestess because she works and train the young children before they have them sacrificed. She does the grooming, the changing, reciting, helping them to recite some of the things they have to say before they take them to the altar and kill them. And she was one of the children that was supposed to go for one of those reasons. But what happens is that somehow or the other, some blemishes shows up on her, and then they couldn't take her because they can't have blemishes. They can't have no marks, no blemishes, no nothing. They just got to be pure, and nothing of a kind should be on their body. So she wasn't able to do that. So she becomes one of the priestess, and she lives there like a person to train the young girls. She falls in love with this Jewish man, and they get married. And now they don't really tell the age of how old this young woman was, Ruth. We don't really find out her real age. And her father is who gave her for the sacrifice. He sold her for the sacrifice or whatever. Like, he, out of all his daughters, she was one of the most purest ones and the most prettiest, and all the other things they were looking for the sacrificial, for the altar. Interesting story, but anyway, that was just a movie version of it. But the real version of it is that she was a young woman, a Moabite woman, and they did not really associate with Jews. Jews worked there and everything else, and they lived in their own communities. So somehow she finds Malone, and they build a relationship. They get married, and she also has a sister-in-law also named Opal, and a mother-in-law named Naomi. What happens is that Malone dies in his marriage to Ruth. They never had any children. So she sojourneys with her mother-in-law, which is Naomi, back to where her mother-in-law is from, back home, because she goes back home because now she lost two of her sons. She's a widow, and so she has to go back to her own homeland where she can find people of her own village that probably will be able to care for her, kinsmen. So she goes back to her homeland, and of course, the place is like she's been gone for 10 years now. So she's like, oh, she's back and she has to rebuild her life again. And she brings this daughter in law, this Moabite. And these people that's from the village, they like, oh, you brought this foreigner here, and they practice all kind of evil. They practice statues and stones and things of that nature of their gods, and we don't want that in our land. We don't want people to be corrupt by any of that stuff. So Ruth goes into the field to glean, and one of the fields that she's gleaning in is a kinsman of her mother-in-law, and she finds, favor in Boaz. That's her. Well, that's a kinsman, Boaz. She finds favor in her, and he likes her, whatever. But the women in the town are just like, oh no, this woman ain't the right kind of woman to be around us, and bringing all that gods of evil into our land. And this is why we've been having famines and we haven't had any rain and crops to grow. It's been a bad season for us because we bring in all these evil, detestable things. So, somehow or the other, she has to be brought before the elders, and they have to judge her if she has any of that stuff she's bringing into their around their people, or into the customs that they're used to having. So she has to be judged, and she finally comes to the realize that she follows the same God as you. That's why she came here, so she can leave behind the things that she was taught from where she came from, to follow the life of her mother-in-law, on the sake of her husband, who she married and he died, and she loved her husband, and so she wanted to follow his life, continue his life or whatever in the land. So it turns out to be a beautiful love story because in the end she becomes um welcomed to among the Jewish people, and she also gets to marry a Boaz, a man who is wealthy and rich, and then her life starts as she starts to have children from him and through the lineage of Jesus Christ. Okay, because after she has a son, I think it's Obed, and then Obed has Jesse, and Jesse, of course, have his sons, and his sons is David. One of them is David, and as the genealogy goes along, then we all of a sudden, somehow or the other, Jesus is coming through that lineage, right? So it's really an interesting story about Ruth, and right now we going through this season in America where people really don't know where they belong or who they come from because we dealing with this immigration stuff, and everybody have all these different religions, different beliefs, different customs, different cultures, different languages, different this, different that. So we all trying to bring together the American people as one, and everybody is pulling this way and that way, especially now that we have a population, overpopulating of people coming here as in the what they call Muslims and practicing Muslim culture, beliefs, or whatever. And it's starting to really change the customs here in America. Now, we had is people that had the faith of Muslims here, Nation of Islam. But nobody really practiced that about the people that wanted to get escape white religion and white culture. So they got into the Nation of Islam. So it's a little different than American Muslims than it is Muslims from Arab countries, especially after we experience some evil that has taken place here in America with Muslims that took a plane and knocked down the World Trade Center. So that's going to always be through history for Americans to feel a certain kind of dislike for the religion or for the culture, whatever. No matter how much people will try to dress it up to make it look good, people going to still have a funny way about it because they always felt like, hey, y'all took down the world, and many of people, loved ones and relatives or whatever, died in that tragic, historic day. That's just something that's just never going to stop people from looking at it in a way that they're going to look at it. It's evil and dark and mean and disgusting. And a whole lot of other things that people have found out, how a lot of times they marry more than one wife. They find it very not loving. Okay, a loving kind religion. It's just more of a evil practice, and it's a very cruel practice, and some of the things they known for doing to women and to children, and also the history of it, of murdering people if they don't want to become a Muslim and if they don't want to practice the faith. And that could be with any religion, to be honest with you, because there has been religions and cults that have been practiced in the United States of America, and people have got involved in it, and there has been women harmed, children harmed, murders, men killed, in the whole nine. That's why you got to be very careful about what faith you follow, what religion you follow. And being free in Christ is that you ain't following religion. You following a relationship with Jesus Christ, point blank, period. You just gonna be looking through that Bible every chance you get to question things before you even move on certain things, and before you even believe in certain things of how you know you look at it. You have to be very careful because anything can be a religion that can turn into evil. So that's why it's important that we do test this, try the spirit and read about things before we act on certain things or before we follow certain things. Now, me being familiar with the AME church, I grew up in it all my life, and there's still some things I question. I've been in it all my life, and I still question who comes into that pulpit and what they teaching and what they be speaking. Even with my own pastor, sometimes if they get up there and they start talking things on politics, I just have to sometimes address it and say, look, I don't think it's right that you should be speaking politics on the pulpit, because not everybody here is a Democrat and not everybody here is a Republican and not everybody here is an independent, whatever. And I think it's kind of like you making people feel a certain way about a different party because you have a prejudice against the party, and that's not cool. You're supposed to keep that separate from what you got to teach on this pulpit about Jesus Christ. And I noticed that a lot of black churches do it. They like to throw in their politics on the pulpit, they views on politics. And I think sometimes it could be very, to me, it can be distracting from the truth of the word of God, and it also takes you off of what you really supposed to be there. You're supposed to learn about Christ, learn about humility, love, forgiveness, those type of things. You're not learning about what's going on with no politician, because we all know most of the time behind politics there's a lot of evil. There's a lot of harm done to one another in politics. There's lies, there's deceit, there's betrayal, there's, wicked games that just be played to influence the people not to win you as to believe in you or to like you for whatever reasons. People got to see it for themselves. Just like somebody had to come to me and say, look, you are brainwashed. Brainwashed about what? I followed this stuff thoroughly. Okay. I explained to people, I said, look, I took a chance twice with Obama. I voted for Obama. I played fair. I gave him 2 terms. I never interrupted nothing about what he did during his service. Okay. I never challenged it. I never did any thorough research on it. I just let it go the way it was going. Okay. But then I realized things in my life was kind of like falling behind, and I wasn't really getting the kind of support and respect in places that I worked for certain kinds of place businesses, and certain rules that was starting to come into the workplace, policies that I had to be forced to accept, and things that were just against my belief, like addressing a man that's a woman, a man that's biological man that's who transgender to a woman, and have to accept working with people that act that kind of way, and I knew you as John, and today you come in as Jane. All this sexual confusion and stuff. And I was like, nah, 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 I can't accept all of that, being shoved on me like that. So there's some things that just was not being done in the right fashion, the right order, especially in me as a Christian, my faith that was being shoved at me. I can understand you not wanting to be a Christian, but there's just some things I'm just not going to play the game with. you know, I'm just not going to do that. And I'm pretty sure there was a whole lot of other people too that just didn't feel this is right. This ain't something I will always learn to accept. This is something that ain't something that's normal. you know? I'm just saying, but anyway, I'm just saying that Obama was president for 2 terms. Nobody really bothered him. Nobody did a No Kings protest, and he did push some policies out there that was not really truly good to be encouraged in society. Nobody came at him. Nobody made any impeachment towards him or whatever. Nobody questioned it. Nobody challenged it. But all of a sudden now, Trump becomes president, and everybody got all these ugly things to say about him. Everybody got to say he's the evilest man that ever been in the presidency. He's done so much wickedness. He's a racist. He's a this. He's a that. Now, the first term when he ran, I didn't vote for Trump because I really wanted to believe that I wanted to see the truth first, in his first term of his presidency. I only knew Trump as, from my world at the time, from business, in the business world and in the financial world. I didn't know him as a politician. So I wanted to see how he ran as a politician and what he was really going to do to the betterment of the American people. So I had to go for just sit this one out. When Obama was leaving office and Trump stepped in, I didn't have any problems. My life was fine, no complaints. I didn't even follow a lot of things he was doing then. I just went on with my life, doing the things I've been doing all the time. But during the end of his term, I heard a lot of mean things being said. I was like, well, he didn't do anything. That's when I started being concerned about people like, are y'all serious? I said, I seem to like him. You know what I'm saying? I like the way this was his last term. And then when I saw that they stole the election from him, the Democrats, and all the things they were saying against him were the things they were doing. I started noticing that they were the hypocrites. They were the mean racists and everything else. And they used the most stupidest black people that just didn't really care. They didn't really know what they were doing. They were just being puppets. Okay. They were just being pulled on the string to do whatever they wanted them to do. And I realized that. I didn't see too many of them going so hard at Obama. He couldn't have done no wrong. They was always rooting him on, rooting him on, rooting him on. And then I realized that black people wasn't really getting treated fairly either. And I seen the poverty that black people were in and the conditions that black people were living in. No, they life wasn't getting better. It was just getting more and more things handed over to them by government control. And I was like, wait, this ain't what I like. Government control. Do as I say and not as I do or whatever. It was like it's just like it was just that type of feeling during the presidency that we had with Biden and with Obama. And nobody was fighting against the wrong they were doing here in America to the people, flooding communities with all these illegals and foreigners. And I didn't even know nothing about a sanctuary city. To be honest with you, I never knew New York was sanctuary. I lived in New York all my life. And I didn't even know some of the things like New York, Chicago, and cities like Philadelphia and places, big, large cities like California and in California, whatever, that these places were sanctuary. I didn't realize that's why I used to see a lot of different foreigners moving to New York, and I had to grow up around all of these different ethnic ethnic groups and culture and different language. I didn't even know. I didn't realize it. I did never realize that New York was a sanctuary city. I didn't even know I was living among these kind of people that were living there. They were all coming and being protected under temporary protected status, or they were there for there was a sanctuary city. I didn't know that. So there's a whole lot of stuff I just didn't know. And I was born and everything in New York. And my parents wasn't no sanctuary or TPS. They were all from America. My mother was from American. My father was American. My father's father was American. My mother's father was American. My mother's mother was American. And everything else. And yes, I grew up around a lot of ethnicity, a lot of different foreigners from different places, and I kind of like didn't it didn't really bother me then. It didn't start bothering me until as I'm starting to get older and I'm starting to realize things like, yeah, all this time, my family been Democrats and we've been voting for this stuff and this is what we've been paying into, struggling into, like allowing people to just come in here and just erase us and take over our cities and take over our housing and take over our jobs and allow them to just move into our city and just build their own little stores and disrespect us and everything. I didn't even realize what was happening to my life until President Trump became the president of the United States and just started allowing us to know what was the deal. And he opened up that, you know, can of worms. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what's going on with y'all life as Americans. This is what's happening to Black America. This is why y'all haven't gotten y'all reparations. This is what's been going on with the Democrats. He actually exposed them. And that's why they are so mad at him. Because at one time he was he was a Democrat himself. So he did advance a lot of black people and told black people the truth about certain things about Obama. And black people got mad with him and they was like, oh, they don't want to believe Obama was really that type of person. Until I started doing a little bit more research since Trump became president. That's when I started to look more deeply at things. You never see things when you're in it. And when you move away from it and you get out of it, you can see it a whole lot more better what he was saying because I didn't realize how wicked the Democrats were and how they've been playing this immigration to remain in power. Because immigrants, the more immigrants they flood into the United States of America, the more they get to remain in power because the immigrants are going to benefit off of voting for Democrats. That's how they're going to be able to get their welfare benefits. That's how they're going to get Section 8. That's how they're going to get all of the money that they've been getting to be living in the United States. And that's how they're going to get their what you call it, they TPS status. They're going to get benefits. They're going to get government benefits by being an immigrant in the United States, coming over here. They didn't come here because they want to be American. They came here because they getting the benefits over for the from Democrats. So when we look at all the money that was going out from the black community, especially for black people to advance, black people to own their own businesses, black people to start building their lives and own basically what they need to own of their own. This is what happened to us. Because the more we stay Democrat and they get the Democrat vote, the black vote, the more they get to bring more illegals and these things that are supposed to come to the black people, the poor, not only just black, but to the poor families or whatever of the American people, the minority, the black, because we've been here basically, we the foundation. It's been a foundation between black and white in America. We didn't have Chinese, and they came later on after we opened up everything opportunities to them with immigration. It was just basically really just the black slaves, the black white slave owners, or the British white slave owners, or whatever, and black. And then all of a sudden, once we got freed, then all of a sudden, immigration was a loophole for the Democrats to bring in immigrants to take over our jobs for cheaper labor and also to try to get us out the way, so they could still have that type of control. So that's why this whole thing with the birthright citizenship is important to pay attention to because look at the black judge that's sitting there that can't even define what is a woman. Then they ask her about birthright citizen. She comes up with some weird story about Japan, being a Japanese and stolen a wallet in Japan, and you still got to deal with the law in Japan as a citizen of Japan. If you are a citizen of Japan, you will go to jail in Japan, and you would not go to jail in your place of origin, but you will go to jail there to be punished for the crime. So what does that got to do with your birthright? You commit a crime anywhere, you go into jail in that place where you committed the crime at. If this will break the law there, you're going to have to deal with the law there. But that doesn't give you citizenship because you're dealing with the law because you broke the law. Yes, you will be punished by the law. Okay, if you break the law. But that doesn't guarantee you no right as a citizen. That didn't even make sense to me. But birthright citizen is that yes, children, most people that came to the United States did not come to change their citizenship. They came for benefits. It's a difference. They came to benefit off of the taxpayers' money on welfare, getting welfare, Medicaid, Medicare, health care, whatever. They also benefit off of some of our programs that we have for our poor or our people that working people and families or whatever. They came here for that. They didn't come here to be American. That's the difference. They didn't come to be American. They didn't come to put back into American and build their life in America with the American family. They didn't come to be a part of the American culture or the family or anything of that nature. They still want to be a citizen, but they want to take the wealth out of America and put it back in their own countries. That's stealing. That's fraud. You stealing. You not here legally. You here illegally because you're doing illegal things. You robbing from the economy here. You stealing. You're not putting back into the economy here. You just stealing. That's the difference. When you have a child here, but you from another country, both parents maybe from another country, and all you doing is coming to America to take from the poor Americans that are here. That's why you have to pay very close attention to birthright citizen. Doesn't make you have a right to be a citizen just because you had a child here and you wasn't a citizen, but your child becomes a citizen because it was born here. No, the child has to be registered as a citizen from where the origin of the parents. If they from whatever country and they just here on TPS or they just here on some temporary visit or whatever, they're not automatically a citizen. They didn't naturalize. They just came to have a baby and bring the child as a citizen and to bring them here as a citizen as well. That is stealing. And it's been a game in the loophole on the 14th Amendment when nobody checked that 14th Amendment because it was written at a time in 1868 when it was done 200 and something more years ago. And nobody did amend it. Okay. That was supposed to have been changed as the time changes and new immigrants come into the United States of America. Some things need to be revised. It needs to be updated. And people been doing it for a while now and they got used to doing it and now they don't know how to, now they trying to switch it up or whatever. That was meant for the time when we as Black Americans were not considered citizens of the United States. During slavery and Black people were not considered citizens. So they had to put that in the amendment to consider us as citizens of the United States. They didn't say Chinese immigrants or whatever. It said specifically, it was meant for those of us who were children of slaves and the slave that was slaves. Them and they children were considered to be citizens of the United States. It didn't have nothing to do with immigrants. It's never mentioned immigrants. But immigrants have been using that as a loophole to come into the United States and benefit off of that on taxpayers and off of the Black people. That's why the Black vote has always been so important to them to get the money to put into these immigrants for their housing, for their health care, for whatever programs for them, for all of that. None of that was ever mentioned in our amendment in our Constitution. We the people. It was for the American people. That was for the American people only. It wasn't immigrant. It's totally different from we the people in the Constitution. The Constitution is for the American people, not for immigrants. It's for the American people first. It was never meant for immigrants. Immigrants, if you came here in our immigration under immigration, that means you came here to either work for a certain period of time, or you came here because you was under TPS status, or you was here to naturalized as a citizen of the United States, but there is a wait for that and there's a process for that. You don't jump ahead of the line and become automatically a citizen because you had a baby in the United States of America or your child was born and it automatically becomes a citizen of the United States. It doesn't work like that. If you were in Germany, because my niece was born in Germany and her citizenship was in my sister was in the military and her husband both were Americans. And guess what? My niece's birth certificate says she's American, not German. And that's how they've been using the immigration, been looping their children in through the 14th Amendment. And so many people don't go and really do American history. And a lot of people don't go that deep into American history or learning about our Constitution or whatever. So they get actually blindsided by that. So it's very important to know what birthright citizen means. Birthright citizenship was only meant for the 14th Amendment for the slaves and the children of slaves. It didn't have anything or they natural place of birth. That's it. It was not meant for immigrants. And that's where President Trump was trying to bring to the American people's attention. In the people, is the Constitution for Americans, born here in United States of America, raised here in United States of America, the citizens of the United States of America. I mean, actually, the citizens of the United States, we the people. Immigration is totally different from we the people in our Constitution. No immigrant supposed to even be sitting in. Well, they got that in there where they got people that's here that's not supposed to be here sitting in our government. That's why President Trump was blowing the roof off of these people, and that's why they mad. All along, they've been doing all this wickedness, hiding it from the people, playing little wicked games of politics to stay in power. The Democrats, that's how there's always been the majority. They've always been the majority because they've been always cheating. When the Republicans have always been the ones to try to keep everything in law and to enforce it and everything else. They small in numbers, okay? Because people don't want to follow the law. People rather do the things that are easy to get by with than to do the things that are something you got to work a little harder at. you know, so they will run with Democrats because Democrats is like control government. They more like more control over your life, and you can easily get free stuff. You could get your free Medicaid, your health. You could get free. You get your welfare, food stamps, and other things. Student loans and things of that nature. When half of the people that go to college come out as stupid as hell to me, because if it's not in you, it's just not in you. You can get all the degrees you want, but if you ain't got common sense, you you ain't got no common sense. So that's why it's always been easy for these immigrants to come here, get what they want out of America without nobody challenging that. And it's been challenged for the last year and a half since Trump been in office. He's been working on it the last time, and that's why they had to steal an election so they could try to stall time to finish doing the wicked shit they've been doing, opening up the doggone borders and allowing people just to come on into the United States of America unvetted, and criminals and murderers and thieves and all kind of rapists and child pedophiles and everything, because this is how they want to stay in power. They wanted to bring as much illegal into the government. They wanted to do as much illegal stuff as possible so that they can stay in power. Now it's all starting to show who they really are. Not saying that America was ever perfect, but ever since these people been in power, it's been nothing but corruption. Corrupt, corrupt, corrupt. They got all kind of illegal foreigners coming in, flooding in here that not supposed to even be here. They don't even know who they are. They just came here, just fake. They never was given any kind of real, you know, status to be here. Like Ilham Omar, perfect example. This woman just all of a sudden she come from Somalia, this poor, you know, country where there's no government really there, and all they do, like President Trump says, is kill each other all day, and that's it's just a very, destroyed place. It's not a real good place to live, and all of a sudden she gets ahead of all these Americans to be the Somalian over Somalia over in her own little got a seat in Congress. Like, come on. I know there was much better qualified Americans for that job for her to be sitting in that position. That was born American, went to school here, American, and know how to really help do what they need to do for the constituents of the people or whatever. How did she get ahead of that? And there's a whole lot of other ones sitting in there. How did they get in those seats over the American people? A Somalian, and she didn't come here to be no damn American. She came to be a Somalian. So that's what people need to look at. You look at these people. They not fighting for not one American. They only want to take care of their own people from their own countries and their own culture and their own custom. This is America. This is not for immigrants. It's for America. We the people. The Constitution is we the people of America. The American people. Born and who put into this country. Not you work for the American people. You don't work for the Somalia or wherever, China or wherever other damn country you come from. How was she able to even get to sit in that seat? And I'm sure she got in there through either Obama or Biden. I doubt if it was Trump. Because he gonna make sure he cross he dot every I and T before he sits you anywhere. Because she does not qualify for that position, even from the way she talk, the way she think, the way she act. Ain't nothing about her is meant to be sitting in Congress making laws for the American people. Even her background, her coming here as TPS, and all of a sudden she becomes an American citizen, and she still want to be a Somalian. That don't work here. Now I could see you came from Somalia, and then you assimilated, and you became more like American, then you came being Somalian. But you there for Somalia. You ain't there for America. So you need to be going stripped out of that Congress seat and shipped your butt right back to Somalia, and you can go and do your constitution over there. And I totally agree with that. So this is what I'm saying about loyalty and selflessness. See, that's why I brought up the story of Ruth, because when Ruth left behind her life in Moab, she assimilated into the culture, into the traditions, into the language, into even becoming her faith. And of course, God had to put her heart through some changes, because after her husband died, which was Milan, she didn't stay to get remarried to another man from her own culture. She remained faithful to the man she was already married to, and to follow his life with his mother back to his home, to his people. And she did that faithfully. So in the end, she was giving the blessing to become the mother, the great 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 grandmother of her lineage to Jesus Christ. Um, and that's how God teaches us. I think Ilhan Omar has been in America long enough now to have assimilated to be an American. And she hasn't. She came with evil. She came with evil intent. She came to destroy America. She brought she brought something that was dark and ugly to our culture here, into our American fabric here. She just brought something that just ain't gonna make it in America. With the way she thinks, the way she act, her ungratefulness, her selfishness, her unfriendliness, and everything else. She just didn't bring something that was kind to the American people. It was dark and it was evil. She didn't come to embrace us. After all the American people have done for her, she was given an education here in America. She didn't get an education in Somalia. How she was protected here in America. They didn't wasn't going to protect her in Somalia. She would probably been dead. The way she carrying on with the American people, the way she been carrying on. So you got to look at those things. When somebody comes into your land, they supposed to come with that kind of level of respect. And a lot of them came here without that respect. That's why we have to go through that birthright citizenship, know who is truly an American, how long they've been living in America, and what have they been doing since they've been here. Look at their passport, how many times they traveled in and out of this country to the other country, how they been spending most of their money. Is their money been put back into the American economy here, or their money been going somewhere overseas and supporting something against America? Okay? Those are the things you got to look at. Because people come here to be an American, they came to be an American. They came to be a part of the economy here. They came to come build in America and the wealth in America and everything. You don't take your money and take it overseas and all these other places of the world. Even when you travel, you only allowed to carry a certain amount of money out of the United States of America. I think it's like $5,000. It depends. It's a certain amount of money you can leave out of America to go into other countries that has to go through some kind of OFAX. So you got to take all of that into consideration. We don't know what people are doing with the when they be using the American dollars to go overseas and do other things with it. That's why I say digital transactions should not always be your way of funneling your money and doing a lot of things on social media or whatever with digital money and stuff like that. I just say you got to be careful what kind of groups of people you supporting. People could just put any kind of false advertisement and false whatever hiding behind some kind of terrorist group or whatever. Give to your own charity, give to your church things that you are known, that are, known. And even with that, you got to be careful. I'm just saying. So, birthright citizen and everything was a very important subject for a lot of American people to know, because a lot of American people don't know. And I'm pretty sure there's a whole lot don't know. They out there, they putting themselves out there, marching no kings and saying the things they speaking against the president of the United States. And they don't even know, half of them don't even know why they out there. They just out there just to be out there because they heard somebody say this. They haven't even witnessed anything for themselves. They just out there just to be out there being stupid. Just following the crowd. And you have to know something about why you're out there. And people been asked, why are you out here? And they like, no, he's no king. He's the president. He's not a king. But he never said he was a king. And we know he's not a king because we don't have kings in the United States of America. We have presidents. So this is the stupidness in these people. These people are just out there just to be mean. Some of them just want to be just out there because they just mad over nothing. you know, they just want to be angry. They just want to have an outlet or something to do to just get out their frustration and their anger. And it's all it is. It's like, what are you out there for? I am here enjoying President of the United States and the information that he's allowing the American people to know. This is what I'm enjoying the most. Because there's a lot of stuff I just did not know. And this has all been new to me. Even when I voted for Obama, I didn't know a lot of things about Obama. And now it's all come to new to me. If I would have known this stuff before I voted for, I don't think I would have voted for Obama. Especially when it came to my faith. I didn't know these things about him. I didn't know a lot of things about Biden either. I didn't even vote for Biden. I think I sat that one out. I didn't vote for Biden in that last term. I did not vote, but I just needed to sit some things out and see it for myself. And now I say, how the hell was he president for 4 years and his mind was all jacked up like that? He was falling down. He wasn't able to remember things. He was just he just wasn't thinking right. And who was running the White House while he was there? We all know it wasn't him. It's obvious. It was Kamala and it was your boy Obama. And I believe it was more Obama than it was even her, because she's such a dizzy broad. I doubt it very much if she was just over there just doing whatever the orders were given. It was Obama. And maybe that Nancy Pelosi. But I said it was more Obama than it was any of them. Because he likes that kind of leadership. He likes to be in power and be seen and heard and giving lectures and speeches, and how he went to go lecture all those black men and they just ran his butt right up on out of there. Because they wasn't falling for the okey doke. Only stupid ones like Roland Martin and all the gay men, all the sissified men and everything going to run behind them, because that's who they are. And I always knew they didn't like black people anyway. They don't like black people, especially, I know Roland Martin, though. He talk a lot of all this pro-blackness, but he the main one. He don't like black people. He don't never defend no black people when they in trouble or something happening in their life or something tragic happened to a black person. He dismissed that right away and go right on to his talking pro-blackness. He ain't no pro-black. He's an opportunist. They all opportunists. Because everything on his platform is, ever since MSNBC or whatever just got fired all of their ass after they don't use them up for whatever reasons they used them up for, and they start building their own platform. Him and the Joy Reids and people like that. They don't care nothing about no black people. All they do like to do is use that black stuff for opportunity. And DL Hughley, him too, with his old gay behind. So only black men that stand behind these kind of men are LGBTQ men. I say they LGBT. They ain't no real strong men of faith or nothing like that. They just a whole bunch of sissy boys that stands behind all of that stupidness. Cause I know I could look at Roland Martin, could tell something that he funny about his fat behind. And then DL Hughley, oh please, he just as sissy as they come. And then the other one, Ricky Smiley, and look at all of the men that they all effeminate men. They not strong masculine men. They not masculine men at all. They want women to be in the front line doing everything for them. They want to sit back and just run their damn mouth like a woman. That's all they are women. Very feminine. They ain't never work a hard day of work in their life. They sat down and just run their mouth, being intellects. But you ask them to fix a doggone, do a plumbing job or fix the sink or do something masculine like that. They don't got that kind of masculinity. All they know how to do is sit down and run their mouth like women and cry like bitches. I'm serious. I don't. They're not masculine men. Sissy boys. Even them churchmen sitting on the pulpit and everything else like that. I find them very feminine. They don't know how to fix a sink. They don't know how to fix a car. They don't know how to fix your brake or change the oil in your car or nothing. They sissies. They want women to be the masculine one, to get out there in the front line and do all the hard masculine work. Those are the kind of men they are. Jamal Bryant never worked a day in his life. All he knows is the pulpit. And all he know how to do in the pulpit is just pimp you out your money. That's all he is a pulpit pimp. That man ain't never had a job in no other place but the pulpit. And when I see men that's only worked in the pulpit all their life, they never had no real job or worked for any kind of company or business or whatever, and they only know the pulpit. You had to have some kind of experience out in the world before you could get up on that pulpit to preach to anybody. If you ask me, even Jesus had a job. He was a carpenter. His family had a business. Everybody that Jesus pulled in his discipleship, they all had jobs. They all had their own business. They all had some kind of skill. Besides going around preaching and trying to teach people how to live. Jesus was a carpenter. He ran a carpentry business. Okay. Paul was a tent maker. He came to follow Christ after his death. He had a tent business. Peter had a fishing business. Matthew was a tax collector. He worked in the government or something like that. And Luke was a doctor. So they all had some kind of business behind them besides just going around pimping people out of their money, getting money off of people. He's more of a follower of a Judas than he is of a Jesus, if you ask me. Because Judas was only in it for the money. He wasn't in it because he wanted to help people. He had his own selfish ambition. That's why he ended up doing what he did to Christ, betraying him for those 30 pieces of silver and going to hell. And only going to be known as a traitor. So you got to remember there was two people in the movement. There was Judas and then there was Jesus. And Judas was in it for the money. He wanted to take over as a business. Jesus was doing it because he really was out there to help the people. And that's who people like Jamal Bryant and Hole and Martin and the D.L. Hugleys and the Smalleys and all of those brothers that's supposed to be in brotherhood. That's all they in it for. They ain't in no faith for the love of helping the people. They're in it for themselves, for their own selfish ambition. These men ain't never had a hard day's of work. Whether they got wives and children or whatever, they probably got children but no wives because they don't marry. They just held on there and have babies and they just become partners with whoever and they just probably just handle their family life in that kind of order. Because what kind of real woman want husbands like that? Well, then there is some. There is some women don't mind having a man that they can beat up on and they can control and they can make them more of a female than they are manly. But I'm just saying that any woman that truly wants to feel loved, protected, and feel a masculine man ain't gonna want them. Okay? They don't want them to make her feel her role as a woman. Because D.L. Hilley and them, they too feminine for me. Very feminine. And they support men like Obama. Even Obama probably had some type. Well, he was the president, and he did work as in law. He was a lawyer, and he's all of that. So he did have some kind of masculine work going on in his. But then again, Michelle also was a lawyer, and she matched his energy or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, I don't see these men taking roles as masculinity. They take roles as women. They want women to do the hard work and they want to sit back and be bitches. That's the way I look at them. That's the way I look at them. Because notice they always, like, when they come to the front line to fight, they always trying to defend some woman. And they always talking about, oh, she needs that. Knowing that that woman don't need to be sitting in that position. Knowing that that's too much masculine energy for her to be having a job like that. Because some jobs are just not meant for women to have. I'm sorry. It's too much masculine energy. I have a problem looking at women bus drivers. I have a problem with seeing women officers. I have a problem, even though I wanted to go in the military, but I wanted to go only on the basis of wanting to go to school and get the GI Bill and all that other stuff. But I wasn't going in there for no other stuff. But I'm glad God stopped me from that. But I'm just saying, like, it's just too masculine. It's too masculine. It's just certain things I just don't see women doing. Like, even with Pam Bondi being, fired. They say she was fired or removed from her role. President Trump removed her. I thought that was a little bit too much for Pam Bondi to deal with as a female, and that was a lot of masculine energy. I look at it in a different way than everybody else can see it. Oh, she was fired, or she wasn't doing a great job. She would do the same way I felt about Christy Gnomes and Pam Bondi or whatever, because I do believe these women, roles like that for women is kind of like too masculine and it comes too rough. So I just see it in a way where it was meant for a man to be in that kind of position. It's just meant for men to do that type of work in Congress. And that's how it's always been anyway, from the beginning of the building of our Constitution and in our life. It was always men. It wasn't women that sat and was lawmakers or in any general whatever headline of the fight for anything to do with our military or whatever. It was always males, 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 but they always had wives that was strongly working with them behind their work and they whatever roles they had to play. That's the way I see it. I just never seen women in the front line. I always seen them behind the work of the man who is in the the top dog or whoever is some woman behind his work. And I'm not saying behind it, I'm saying right there with him, but they're together as one, but he is in the front, he's taking the front line. That's that. I'm not saying that woman can't play the role, because Deborah did, was the judge. She was a judge. And, a lot of people get confused with that. Yeah, she was a judge. She was also married, but her judgment was fair and everything. And she helped Barack through the military to strategize his military, because she was a female and she was there to help. But she also had to take also some credit for what she did. That's what you read the whole Bible, you're going to realize that it is a man's job to go into war and battle. It's not for women. Women are there to stand behind, to be there with him through the fight, the nurturer, and everything else like that. And she's there to support his work and support him in his battle, whatever. But it was never meant for women to take that front line in that fight, in that role. Never. And if you notice how masculine women get when they in these roles, it's very difficult. And if you look at this female judge like Kajanji Johnson Jackson, whatever her name, this woman is as dumb as a doorbell, and she don't need to be sitting in that seat. She don't even know how to make fair judgment. She don't even know how to really define what is a woman. that's kind of that's kind of dingy. Well, I'm just saying, but it's just some things we just not built for, and some women we just not built for it. It brings out a lot of masculinity in a woman, and it does do damage to her. It does do a lot of damage to her. So I think Trump probably moved her out just in time to get somebody that he knows that can be a little bit more when it comes to dealing with these people in that Congress place, in the laws, and those people that come all hardcore and masculine the way they do, that they can handle it a lot better. I saw the same thing with Christy Gnomes. And I don't think there was a decision made by them themselves. I think it was a decision that was already in the making, and she was just holding it up for the meantime until he can probably really find the person to really fit that role. Because remember, he's only been in office for like, ooh, it has it been 18 months now or so? It hasn't been 18 months. And remember, they've been giving this man a hard time from the time he walked through the door. So he still hasn't really got all his people in the place where he need them to be. And some people just had to play that role temporarily until he can find the right male or whoever that can really put in that spot. Some people are just there just temporarily, just acting until that person that can really do the job can be placed. That's the way I'm seeing it. I don't see it in any kind of other way. It is a very tough job for a woman to carry. And if she, I don't know if she's married, she got children, she got a husband, that can also play a big part in it. The same thing with Christy Nome. Now, she has a husband and she probably got a family too, so that can play. That sometimes women can't be doing all this stuff, and sometimes these masculine jobs, these jobs can mess with the woman's hormones, and it can cause problems with her cycles and everything else in that matter, because it does interrupts that on her territory. It can cause some health issues for women when she takes on a lot of jobs that are very masculine. With masculine, and these jobs cause a lot of yelling and screaming and trying to regulate we regulate things in the right way, and it can cause harm to her hormones. It can bring out a whole lot of masculine energy, and it can cause problems to her hormones. That's why God didn't build us like that. Men are supposed to be the ones to take the front line in a battle, in a fights, in arguments. Because my ex-husband used to say, men are the ones who are the aggressors, and women are supposed to be the peacemakers. Simple as that, because that's just who they are. They masculine. They built like that. They muscles. They more muscle. That's why they got more muscle, and they got to use that masculine energy. They just got to use it, just like we have to use. What is we? The X. We two X's. They're X and Y. We we'll break down even quicker than they would because they got more muscle and they built to be that way. They just built for it. So anyway, I guess I kept y'all long enough. So I'm going to get out of here. I just wanted to just say happy Saturday. I wanted to talk about the story of Ruth, about the Moabite woman who was a faithful to her mother-in-law. She followed her mother-in-law faithfully after the death of her husband Malone, and she did end up being one of Jesus's great grandmothers, because she was David's great grandmother, I believe, because David father was Jesse and Jesse's father was Obed. So the lineage of Jesus Christ. And this woman was a Moabite. She left her faith behind, her old ways of her life behind, to follow the life of her dead husband with the mother-in-law, and then she ended up marrying a wealthy kinsman of her dead husband's. And that is the story of her life. And that's why I said we have to look at immigration in a way when we don't see people changing from their cultures and their customs, from their old ways, from where they come from, then we know they're not here to be an American. They still want to stay in the old ways and not come into the new life here as an American. And the birthright citizenship is important to really take a look at it, because that was the loophole how a lot of people came to be an American, but they're not an American. And they saying immigrants built this nation, which is a devil's lie. It was the faith in the people who came that built America to be a nation in freedom in our faith in Christ. So with that being said, you all have a blessed and wonderful Saturday. And if God's willing, I may or may not come back on Resurrection Sunday. I doubt if I be here Resurrection Sunday, but I just want to wish you all a happy Easter. Be safe out there and enjoy